Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb.
Listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Ados need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. On the edge go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, the win, you need our energy. You gon' see, listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Ados need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Welcome to Reset Race, where water is wet and fat meat is greasy. We keep telling y'all about these motherfucking socialists. We just did this video like 3 weeks ago about the Detroit socialists, but by popular demand, y'all want us to again explain that water is wet and fat meat is greasy. So we gonna do that. I'm Sam, aka the Khaleesi. Catch me while you can, cause come October 1st, I'm not fucking with y'all no more on Twitter. So yeah, Morgan, say hi to the people.
What's up? Riley Freedmen, aka Morgan Malachi. Here we go again. These people keep playing these games.
Come on, King.
All hail King Killmonger, the resident king of England.
Let the joyous news be spread. The wicked old witch at last is dead.
Yeah, let's get straight to it.
Oh my God, I'm dead.
So is she.
Hey, listen. All hail King Charles. He been waiting this forever. King Charles like, oh, I thought I was gonna die before that bitch.
This is like Kato, what you smoking? Bitch, I'm smoking Queen Elizabeth. Bitch, I put that walk up in my cup, you know I'm sipping it.
All right, they call me Mud. You can find me on my social media at Of Lineage. That's OF Lineage, Twitter and Instagram. I am the creator of Bitter Dose TV. Let's go ahead and get into it. So this is Robin D.G. Kelly, and this is at Freedom Dreams and the Socialist Project, or this is, I guess, a socialist conference that they did in Chicago. But anyway, he decided he was going to speak on reparations. And of course, he did what the socialists normally do. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Another thing, just, you know, we're a room full of abolitionists. Eliminating cages isn't just about saving money, but it's also about ending torture and violence. Ending racism isn't something you do only through the law or affirmative action. It is about confronting trauma. It is about education and reparations and repair. And clearly there is much you could read about this, but I would point you to start with Derecka Purnell's Becoming Abolitionist, which really takes you through a personal journey, but also a collective journey to understand that to be abolitionist is not simply about removing these structures and not even just about replacing it with something else. It's about lived experience and the damage that capitalism, racial capitalism has done to us, and how do we heal, and what does that entail, okay? So let us pause for a moment, and since I did mention reparations, I want to talk about the attack on the demand for reparations coming from a segment of the left. Some of those cats look like me, in the name of defeating race reductionism. Now, reparations is regarded in this discourse as a hustle. Okay, now, let me be fair. It is becoming a hustle. Let's be clear about that. In some circles, in the hands of the black bourgeoisie, it is, and its allies, reparations is becoming the latest hustle. Let me explain what I mean by that, and let me explain what I try to do. Namely, in its popular liberal expression in the US, reparations, the way it's being kind of mapped out, does not change the terms of racial capitalism at all, nor does it acknowledge land theft,
Pause.
dispossession as part of the
Racial capitalism, right? When has reparations ever been about fixing racial capitalism? Let's just start there.
I don't think Callie House said anything about that.
Racial capitalism, was that, I don't remember them talking about that with the Holocaust Jewish people or the Japanese people. I don't remember them talking about that either. Am I wrong? Nobody said shit about racial capitalism. Excuse me. When did the socialists tell the Native Americans to give up their fucking casinos and stop being fucking capitalists? Have y'all seen that? Can somebody show me the tweets?
You won't find it.
Well, this is from Cedric Robinson's Black Marxist, where he defines what he means by racial capitalism. I'll go ahead and read it. As part of the inventory of Western civilization, it will reverberate within and without, transferring its toll from the past to the present. In contradistinction to Marx and Engels' expectation, the bourgeoisie society would rationalize social relations and demystify social consciousness. The obverse occurred. The development, organization, and expansion of capitalist society pursued essentially racial directions. So too did social ideology. As a material force, then it could be expected that racialism would inevitably permeate the social structure emergent from capitalism. I use the term racial capitalism to refer to this development and to subsequent structure, subsequent structure as a historical agency. Our society was based almost entirely on a racial hierarchy. Like the capitalist shit followed the direction of race. And if we talk about it in American context, we got to be real about the history. We're talking about slavery, the exploitation of Black Americans. And if we're going to be talking about like fixing that shit, then yes, we would be talking about reparations.
I had to check somebody on Twitter talking about, since POCs were, natives and POCs were disadvantaged since colonial times. I was like, there was no fucking POCs during colonial times. How is it you can manage to say natives, but you can't say Black slaves? Where were the Mexican slaves? Where were the Chinese slaves during colonial times? Shut up. Sorry, but that drives me crazy. All this is terrible.
So there's a sentence that stands out to me here. And it's as a material force, then it could be expected that racialism would inevitably permeate the social structures emergent from capitalism. That includes socialism, right?
Yes.
So like the socialists don't have a plan for the racism either. I think they should just pay us and then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, we'll get together on our own.
They're just butthurt because they thought they were going to stuff Bernie Sanders down our throats, and they've been trying to recover ever since. They don't have a plan. They don't. And we were about to fall for it. And I'm glad that we did it.
Oh, no, I think I understand what their next plan is. I think they're going to try to co-opt the reparations shit and turn it into all of this goofy shit that they want to do.
Reparations for everybody.
They called the dude called it. Never mind. I'll wait until that goes.
They want to give out our reparations like Oprah was giving out cars at that fucking show that day.
You get a car! 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 Everybody gets a car!
Y'all want to get back into it?
Yeah.
Reparations, the way it's being kind of mapped out, does not change the terms of racial capitalism at all, nor does it acknowledge land theft and native dispossession as part of the same process of settler colonial extraction that depended on the theft of human beings.
We've been saying this for years. Kim Tallbear told us already Native Americans don't want the fucking reparations. They want their fucking treaties upheld. Natives are sovereign. Reparations is a different kind of thing. It's a different avenue. And Native Americans, some of these tribes own slaves. So.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Ford. Earlier this month in our 7 Inside Reports, I took a personal journey to look at a largely unknown chapter of Black history when my ancestors and thousands of other blacks were slaves, not of the whites, but of the Indians.
We have different claims. Stop mixing Native American claims into in with Black folks to negate our claim. We don't like it. It's not acceptable. And we see through it.
I mean, they keep screaming about, land back, natives. Do you understand? So where does that leave us in this equation? They think that we're supposed to be perpetual victims. Like, where does that leave us if the natives get their land?
So this is the thing. I don't care about that. That's between the natives and the government. That has nothing to do with me getting my reparations money. If y'all want to give the natives their land back, I'll take my reparations money and buy some land that don't belong to the natives. I don't give a fuck. Like what the natives do with the government is not my business. What the Japanese did with the government for their money is not my business. Either I'm going to sit here and be like, I'm with it, or I'm going to just sit back and shut the fuck up. The same way I need them to either be out here saying they with me getting my reparations, or I need them to sit back and shut the fuck up. What you got up here, Mud?
Well, it's the history of reparations payments in the country, starting in 1924 with the Pablo Lands Act of 1924. That's when Native Americans first started getting payments. We're not talking about land, we're talking about cash payments. And like all it is reparations mainly to them.
So where's the Negro piggyback attachment to that? Where's the Negro pies for this, Mud?
Nowhere to be found.
So just native pies, no Negro pies.
Yeah, and no one has said, well, Native Americans, why aren't you including the Black people? No one says that. The last time they got something was in 2016 with Barack Obama. And to be clear, like some of these are like multiple things, attached together. So in total, we're talking about almost, somewhere between 500 and 600 claims that have been settled by the federal government with tribes.
At the end of the day, unless y'all giving me native money, stop trying to give the natives my money. Cause I want part of them casinos if you just giving out people's money who ain't part of people's shit. Shit, I used to hang out with a Seminole with this Native American dude who was connected to those, like, was it the Seminole tribes and shit in Florida, who had them big money casinos and shit. What? It's a good time.
I'll take some sovereign land.
Yeah.
I'll definitely, I'll get my autonomy back the same, because it was the same process, right? It was the same colonial process that stripped the Native Americans from their land, their autonomy, and all these things. Well, this was the same process that happened to us. How come they got so much more than we got? And none of what they got ended racial capitalism.
Nope.
Here's another thing. Tribes received $20 billion from COVID relief package. It's funny how no one brings up, like, what about the blacks when other people are doing stuff? It's only when black people are talking about shit for them that we get motherfuckers trying to tell us something is wrong with us when we're not dividing our pie with everybody else.
Sounds like that's the hustle to me, Mud.
And they
to the hustle. Go ahead, Morgan.
no, because here we got the Lenape tribe, right? Now let the socialists say it, or whatever they are, Antifa, whatever they are. He'll say like, oh, well, you know, it's not a recognized tribe and it's their land. Pennsylvania is their land. But then you go in Delaware, guess what? They're recognized there. And that's how they got what? The COVID money. What did we get? That's what I'm talking about. I saw their funding. And it's like they keep pushing that, like, oh, we don't have our land. We're not recognized, but you are in Delaware.
We can keep going, man.
As part of the same process of settler colonial extraction that depended on the theft of human beings. The logic of liberal reparations is firmly rooted in property rights, right? It's rooted in documentation. If you don't have a subscription to Ancestry.com, don't even bring your papers up there.
So now, because we're already going to get into this, because he's going to bring up Darity later. If he would have actually read it, he would have known all he had to do is be able to find a family member on the 1870 census that would have been the age of a slave when slavery ended. That's pretty fucking simple.
Well, I was just going to say, and more than likely, none of us would have to do any of that. The government would already have something in place to determine eligibility.
The government? You mean the government knows if we came here or if we were already here? Are you saying that there's immigration records that tells the government which Black people are immigrants and which ones aren't?
Yeah, and if not, they can figure it out. They can go through the records and they can do the census shit, and we don't have to do anything. Like, I don't know why they keep, like, this is some bullshit, like some lie that they keep spreading around to just like make it seem like kooks when no one is talking about this shit.
So, Mud, I find it funny that the Germans can figure out how to pay Jewish people globally because they found them around the world because they had to scatter because you killed them. And for some reason, they were still able to find those Jews, those Jewish people, those Jewish Holocaust survivors and their families to pay them all around the world. But you telling me you can't find my Black ass in California, and no. This is all doable. This is a joke. This is just some stupid thing that people quit pretending like Black Americans, Negroes, freedmen, whatever you want to call yourself. I like calling myself an American Negro. Until they give us a new classification that belongs strictly only to us, I will continue to call myself that. But it is what it is. But how y'all keep pretending like we don't know who we are? We've been here the whole time. That's like you trying to pretend like y'all don't know who Native Americans are. But Native Americans are who they say they are. But for some reason, Black people just all of a sudden, because you let Black immigrants in starting 1990, y'all don't know the difference between Black Americans and people who got here fucking less than 30 years ago.
And what's wrong with Ancestry? Like the way he mocked it is like, yes, motherfucker, we want to know who we are. We want to know our family members. And if you can afford to pay for it, there's a lot of things that you can find out. That's an open database. You don't even have to really go to these record rooms. You don't. So what is wrong with that? Because I had an ancestor, well, I had a family member that did all of that work, physically went to these places. So why is he mocking that? That just makes me angry because you're trivializing our whole experience. Why would he down that in that way or make it, and then the crowd laughing, and I know it's a whole bunch of white people saying there's nothing funny about that. There's nothing funny about people trying to reconnect their families. That's crazy.
Not only that, like we would be connecting like ourselves to the actual harms. What else are we talking about? Like the definition of reparations is to repair harms. So you have to connect it to the people who were harmed. I don't know, like what, why is this such a difficult thing for like these fucking socialists to understand?
Oh, reparations isn't a poverty program?
My thing with the ancestry comment, it's like, yeah, but I would need to do that if I wanted Holocaust reparations. Like nobody's just gonna look at my blackface and say, here you go, here's your money. If I wanted reparations from the Japanese American internment, I'm gonna have to prove it with documentation that these are my people. Why does the standard change when it's us? Like under no set of circumstances would anybody be seeking out reparations and not have to prove who they are. But all of a sudden, it's so weird. These Negroes and their kooky ideas.
You know what trips me out? I'll see stuff all the time like, oh, this business was established in 1856. This business was established in 1872. We've been in business since 1912. Why do we act like people ain't got records back 100 years? There's a lot of places that have been in business since before slavery. There are records. Quit playing us. There's insurance records. People keep very good records about their property when it comes to their businesses. And being that Negroes were property, and y'all never really made it illegal to own slaves. It's not like people had to like burn the files because y'all was gonna come and lock them up for keeping Negroes. Like they kept that shit. They put that shit in attics. A lot of that stuff is sitting in people's great Nemo house right now, and they just ain't went through the boxes yet.
It's like this weird thing where like we're not even supposed to like have any details about what exactly is the issue. It's like, I don't know, like why are they always positioning shit like when we talk about our actual struggle, our actual plight in this country, they want us to be as vague as fucking possible. But when it comes to everybody else, we can be very, very specific. It really just seems like everybody is working together to like just ignore Black America.
And they use the same talking points different ways. And you're right, they are.
Yeah, it is so fucking crazy. You'll be in like a discussion with a fucking hardcore right-winger one moment and then a hardcore lefty the next moment, and they will say the same exact shit.
Because they all hang out together and shit. That's the problem. That Red Brown Alliance shit is real.
And for people that be like, you know, I'm exaggerating, go listen to how like I think it was Tim Pool and Vosh had a fucking debate about this shit, and I did a video about it, and they were able to agree like we shouldn't do reparations based on race, we should do it based on class. Like it's very easy for both sides to come together on the issue of like undermining Black people. And this has been a consistent thing throughout this fucking country, but they keep trying to gaslight us like this is not what the fuck is going on. all you fucking left-leaning motherfuckers, you fold to these right motherfuckers and y'all agree to fuck the Negro so that you could do whatever little program that you can do that's going to benefit poor white people.
As they've always done.
Well, if the status quo were a deal breaker, none of these people would be here. America's always been racist towards Black people, and everybody here has always been okay with it.
All right, should we keep going?
Yeah.
Right? Don't use someone else's subscription. And it's rooted in compensation without transformation. That is, without addressing indigenous dispossession, for example. Proposals in this framework tend to think about or frame reparations entirely within a capitalist political economy. So payments are calculated according to capitalist principles.
Do we not live in a capitalist society? So why would reparations be set up in any other way besides in a capitalist economy? What are you gonna give me? Fucking dreams and hopes? Like, I live in a capitalist society. You gotta give me shit to repair me. So as long as I live in a capitalist society, you have to give me money.
Best I can do is student loan debt.
I don't even take these motherfuckers seriously when it comes to money, because like I didn't see a white boy from upstate New York dumpster diving, and he didn't have to. So at that point, when it comes to these socialists and anarchists, whatever these motherfuckers want to say, I'm not, listen, that's, again, I keep saying that's why Occupy Wall Street didn't work, because y'all were out there looking dirty, and Black people don't like that shit. Black people want and need certain things. Fuck out of here.
What it really is that they expect us to push through their agenda. Like, we are supposed to fight for their cause. I mean, you motherfuckers failed. You have not achieved your goal of changing the economic system in this country. And since you have failed, I am not going to hold up like my justice waiting for you motherfuckers to get your shit together. It's not my job to fucking transform the economic system. Like, once my shit is taken care of, then we can have a conversation about that type of shit. But I'm not sitting here I'm tired of being the fucking sacrificial lamb for every fucking body, and then no one wants to do shit for us.
Don't forget, reparations is polling higher than socialism. So fuck you socialists anyway. That's for you, Kyle Kalinske, KKK Kyle.
Well, I did want to say this one quick thing, and it's it took us a war to end the economic system of slaveocracy that we had going on here. Socialists, they're just pussy. Like, it's so many white people out here. Everywhere I go, I run into a white socialist. How come y'all ain't out here acting up? How come y'all ain't out here acting like y'all want to change the economic system? Because you know it's not only Black people that's going to be able to do that. We can secure ourselves some reparations, but as far as changing America's economics, go get all your white socialist friends to do that. Go to your distressed communities and tell them you need to change things, because there's more of you than there are of us. Bring me back an army and then we can talk.
They can't convince
Negro energy.
They can't convince the whites. That's why they spend all their time trying to convince us. They know we're struggling. They want to sell us a fucking dream. And that's why they don't want us to fucking like get a leg up. Because if we get a leg up, they don't think they're going to be able to sell the dream to us in the fucking world.
Not even that. If we get a leg up, they can't use our stories anymore to push their agenda. What does this country really owe them? Outside of, like, we can have a discussion about American citizens being owed a certain standard of living as Americans, but outside of that, if you take out the Negro struggle and why Negroes are owed shit in this country, the natives been dealing with the US government getting their shit It's just Black people. Everybody else, all these other disadvantaged groups, minorities, people of color, the government don't owe them shit. And as soon as Black people get what they're due, the government gonna turn around and tell them that they don't owe them shit. And that's what everybody's worried about, because y'all will have to get off the Black American Negro gravy train. No more affirmative action for your motherfuckers. No more getting anything that was supposed to go to Negroes.
I mean, I think that it's deeper than that. I think personally, like a guy like this, they can talk that way because they have everything. All of them. They're fine. That's the thing that irks me so much. So nobody else can be fine, but you're okay. They'll never give up any kind of comfortability. White people, you can forget that shit. But these type of people too. Are you kidding me? He got 2 earrings in his hair, in his ears. He's not giving that up. He's sitting there, that polo jacket, that's like $180 jacket. It's a fucking windbreaker. And he's over here talking shit
about the bourgeoisie, but he got $180 jacket.
Who is the Black bourgeoisie? Is it just Jay-Z and Oprah?
No, it's Negroes like this too.
Don't forget Jay-Z's wife.
And Nene Leakes.
Nah, it's funny because they always want to point the fingers at other motherfuckers, but it be motherfuckers like this. This is who it is. Like they want to control the Black community. They want to say what the fuck is going to go for the rest of us, and like they're pretending like they're not trying to pull those strings. They're not like they're not serious about liberating Black people. They're just using us for like we're pawns for like their political agenda. And personally, what it is for these motherfuckers is their own professional careers. He gets to go to little conferences like this. He probably gets paid very well to say this bullshit that white people want to hear, the white socialists want to hear. And, you know, he gets to go back to his life in comfort and not even worry about the Negro problem anymore. All right, y'all, you want to get back into it?
Yep.
Frame reparations entirely within a capitalist political economy. So payments are calculated according to capitalist principles. Outcomes are even seen as strengthening capitalism, making it more fair and less racist, so that we can actually continue with the non-racial capitalism. That's part of the argument, which is hilarious when you think about it. Creating an even playing field so we can compete together. And the case for reparations has become increasingly parochial, driven by the demands of the ADOS people, the American descendants of slavery. For example, there's this book by Bill Darity and Kirsten Mullen, who Bill Darity is a great economist, an amazing figure. I just disagree with the book, which is called From Here to Equality, which not only argues that reparations should be limited to US descendants of the enslaved who can document their genealogy, but they dismiss Asian Americans, for example, whom they deem voluntary immigrants who directly benefited from the US Jim Crow regime. Now, let me just give some history here. It's kind of an odd, it's an odd and ahistorical assertion because it betrays an ignorance of a long history of forced Asian labor, which of course replaced formal chattel slavery. The first thing they did was they got so-called coolie labor, contract labor.
That's crazy.
Coolie labor in America?
So
I think he's Jamaican.
He is Jamaican. And even where the coolies were in Jamaica, they literally fought because they were like, you cannot treat us like slaves. We are not slaves.
Despite significant and persistent inequalities among Asian American groups, even the worst off among them have something, in James Baldwin's words, something to lose, namely their not Blackness in an anti-Black society. So let me make this a little more concrete by discussing the original Asiatic in the American imagination, the Chinese immigrant laborer in the 1800s. Yes, everything always goes back to the Chinese immigrant labor, everything in Asian American studies anyhow. where we can see how not blackness was constitutive of the very concept of the Asiatic from the start. What we see in each of the 3 Chinese labor stories of the 19th century that I briefly touch upon in my book, Chinese wage labor in California, Chinese contract labor in the US South, Chinese indentured labor in Cuba, is that Chinese presence was always predicated on black absence. As we learned from Nadia Aram-Hario, Edley Wang, and Moon Ho Jung, Chinese migrants came to California because it was a free state that prohibited slavery and thus had an enormous demand for labor. They were transported to Cuba as part of the coolie trade that sprang up to take the place of the declining global slave trade. And they were transported into the South in the wake of the Civil War to help lock down black economic and political subordination. So blacks were blank slates forcibly imprinted with civilization via slavery. The Chinese possessing human coordinates could not be made into slaves. In an article included in the appendix of the Joint Committee's final report, Charles Wolcott Brooks, former U.S. consul to Japan, observed Negroes, first imported from the wilds of Africa, heathen barbarians in a wild and savage state far lower in the scale of being than the Chinese, were 4,000 years ago, for Negroes had no literature, philosophy, or cultivation, were brought here as slaves against their will, with all the horrors of the Middle Passage, to furnish involuntary labor under the lash, a thing no Chinaman will bear. So what marked blacks as slaves, Wolcott suggests, was not the mere fact of their enslavement, but that they bore it, as livestock would, because they stood outside the realm of human dignity and honor. Wolcott willfully denies the historical record of black resistance, of slave revolts, fugitivity, black abolitionism, in order to assert slavery is a test of evolutionary fitness. It only happens to those who let it happen to them. For everyone else, it was unthinkable. The Chinese were ineligible for citizenship, but they were also ineligible for enslavement. But what about the coolies? As Moon Ho Jung has shown in Coolies and Cane, Chinese laborers in the US were persistently associated with coolieism, and through coolieism with that other form of unfree labor, slavery. So the Chinese were ineligible for enslavement, but the mediating term of coolie brings the two terms into a plausible relationship with one another. The point here is what was accomplished ideologically by positing this association, namely tainting Chinese laborers with blackness and slaveness. As Rudy Batzel discusses, the Working Men's Party in California viewed the large-scale employment of the Chinese as capital's attempt to resurrect slavery in another form in order to undercut white labor once again, right, as the slave power had. So the rhetoric of coolieism allowed the Working Men's Party to mobilize anti-black affect against the slave in the push for Chinese exclusion. But wasn't the Asiatic constitutively not black and not slave? It bears emphasizing that being compared with coolies and slaves did not mean being indistinguishable from slaves. To the contrary, distinguishability is a prerequisite for comparison. Comparison requires difference. We do not compare identical things, X and X, we compare X and Y. It was because they were known to be not black, because they had not blackness to lose, that the slave comparison could be used to tarnish the Chinese. This is apparent if we look at the limit case, Chinese indentured laborers in Cuba. They were technically voluntary laborers, right? They signed labor contracts, they received wages, and the contracts were called papers. Yet there were many aspects of their experience that made them seem unfree, compared, for instance, to Chinese immigrants in California. Lisa Yun, in the book The Coolie Speaks, concludes Chinese coolies were in fact slaves, that their contracts or papers were a mere pretense. But there are many reasons to believe coolies were in a privileged position relative to slaves, from the distinctions made between the two in Spanish colonial law, as you can see in the first box, to the division of work on sugar plantations in Cuba. For me, the most compelling evidence that coolies were not slaves is precisely the evidence that Yun adduces to show that they were, namely the testimonies that coolies gave to the commission that China sent to investigate the coolie trade in Cuba in the 1870s. I don't know how many of you have looked at this testimony, coolie testimony, that was produced by this commission in a report. This is a torrential record of physical suffering and grief, suicide and murder, anger and hopelessness. A recurrent theme in this testimony is the coolies' bitterness that they were being treated like slaves. Again, Yun reads this as evidence the coolies were slaves. But as Rebecca Scott suggests in Slave Emancipation in Cuba, the coolies' testimony rather shows that they jealously guarded their superior status to slaves. The complaint, we were treated like slaves, should be read as we are not slaves and should not be treated as such. Right? There's an indignation that the coolies are showing at this ontological misreading of them as slaves. Plantation owner Eliza Ripley, recalled, the poorest, lowest coolie carried his contract on his person and never hesitated to assert his rights. The fact that the coolies' papers did not mean all they purported to mean does not indicate they were therefore meaningless. Papers did not make the coolie a free laborer, a liberal subject, an autonomous rights-bearing individual. But they were an ontological marker, tagging the coolie as not property, as a being who had to consent to being coerced. This is why coolie traders held Chinese men in barracoons for weeks and even months, beating them and starving them until they agreed to sign contracts. The coolie was different from the slave, not because he was at all times treated better than the slave, but because he was considered a custodian of his own freedom. And so he had to consent to its surrender, even if the consent was obtained through force. So what bearing does this discussion of the 19th century Asiatic have upon the Harvard affirmative action case? What this brief historical detour suggests is that the Asiatic's constitutive not blackness is a form of privilege or advantage that has shaped their insertion into the economy, society, and polity. Thus, it is misleading to say with Justice Powell that Asian Americans are affirmative action spoilers who disrupt the discrimination underrepresentation link. The question how Asian Americans are succeeding despite discrimination, how do they start out in the same place as blacks and end up farther ahead, is not on point. The question should be instead, how have Asian Americans been positioned differently from blacks and in relation to blacks, such that the specific advantages, immunities, and burdens attached to that position shape their group outcomes relative to blacks? This sociometric question undercuts the Asian spoiler narrative by exposing the logical fallacy upon which it rests.
Yeah, that's in the Asian Lit video. She literally breaks that down. So that is incorrect. And if your people, if you are an Asian American who has been here for generations and your people were enslaved and it was allowed by the US government, you need to get your people together and sue the government and get your money. You can't get my money, but you need to get yours. That's it. See how easy that was?
What the fuck does coolies have to do with America?
Not a damn thing.
But you hear the white people laughing in the audience. And this is why y'all be looking crazy when you talk to regular black people and you wonder why, well, black people vote against their own interests. You know, free college and, you know, would be great. But it's like, y'all talk. But we keep telling you that's not what we want. Be like, no, because this is going to help you. But we're like, no, we've done the research. Here's the reports. None of the stuff you're talking about is going to help us. And they're like, but it'll help you more than it helps anybody else. But it'll help because there's more of y'all motherfuckers and y'all will have more. Like you still do. Whatever. All right, I'm done with this. Go ahead, keep going, guys. Whoever else has something to say.
There were some Chinese that came from like the railroads down south, but I don't think they were called coolies. I think that was just specific for the Caribbean. But anyways, those Chinese people, the intention was for them to replace the slave labor that was there. So why exactly would we be trying to include these people into our reparations? And like Sam just said, if they do have a claim for reparations, why can't it be separate? In fact, in San Francisco, we have the AAPI community trying to get 118 million out of the city of San Francisco, and I don't see anyone talking about Black people.
Nope, and that was in the 1800s. That riot and fires from the 1800s, and it only happened to the Chinese. So for the AAPI, that's some bullshit. It should really be going strictly to the Chinese and the descendants of those people.
Well, and then that also becomes a thing. Because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was a large ratio of men and a small ratio of women, or a large amount of men and a small amount of women, which created a fucked up ratio to where a lot of them had to mix in with other communities. So you're barely going to have a population in the country now that is probably still identifying as Chinese American and can trace their lineage all the way back to those incidents in the 1800s. But again, that's their thing to figure out. I don't know why we're mixing and matching all these things when one has nothing to do with the other.
You can talk to me about Chinese slaves when you bring me a Black Israel. Everybody don't get the same things. That's never been the case in anywhere. As far as the people, nobody went to China to collect Asian people to bring them over here to be slaves. That's not how that happened. So to compare their situation to ours is completely ridiculous. And even if it was the exact same situation, that's not who the fuck we talking about. We talking about the people who was targeted during Jim Crow. We talking about Dr. King's people. We talking about Malcolm X's people. That's the people we talking about. Is it okay to just have a conversation about them people?
And let's be clear, it was not slave labor. It was basically low-paying labor, so we could say they were exploited, but it's not like they worked for free.
Yeah, it's like the white people in the factories. Yeah, they worked in terrible conditions and at terrible wages, but those fuckers got paid. And
yeah, I feel bad, and we can have conversations about like trying to repair some shit like that in general. But why are we always trying to compare this shit to like slavery? If slavery was a very distinct thing in this fucking country, and it happened to one group of people. And then that same group of people were exploited for another 100 years after slavery, codified in law. So why can't we just be specific about that group of people and let other people have their own other specific thing, like it's already been happening, because other groups have gotten reparations and no one has included us.
And again, this just rolls back to how funny it is when it's time for Black folks to get reparations. There has to be all these discussions, but they keep giving money to the Jewish Holocaust survivors and there's no discussions. I just need y'all to shut the fuck up and let me deal with the government. This has nothing to do with you. And is this dude eligible for a check?
No, none of the, that's why it's like every time now it's starting to fit like a description. Every time somebody starts talking crazy, doing a loop-de-loop, when they're supposed to be so smart, that's because they're not eligible.
But you would think if even if you weren't eligible and you talk all this pro-Black exploitation of labor type of deal that motherfuckers be trying to push, you would understand that there's only one position that you can take where the optics are actually going to fit with your fucking politics. For real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not this bullshit.
But that's the thing. He's just giving people cover so that when they go out, they're already against reparations, because no pro-reparations person is in this room. They would have cut him off already. So he's just giving them arguments so they can say to Black people when they encounter them. He's no different from, say, a Ben Shapiro. He doesn't believe none of that shit. He just says it so people have, well, Ben Shapiro says this, so I can quote him all day. And this is the same thing. Like, he's Adolph Reed. He's that type.
All right, y'all, you want to get back into it?
Yeah.
Asian labor, which of course replaced formal chattel slavery. The first thing they did was they got so-called coolie labor, contract labor, throughout the Western Hemisphere. And also it ignores the ways in which US wars in Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, produced refugees, right? So,
Boss,
Huh?
Did y'all notice he went from America exclusively because that's where Darity's book is set, and that's everything he talks about is in America. And then he goes to the Coolie labor, and and then he goes to Vietnam and all these other places. I thought you were just talking about Chinese people. What happened? And now it's all these American wars, but America hasn't had a war in China. So he can't blame that on that. So he just keeps moving the goalpost just an inch further every time he speaks.
Yeah, I noticed that quantum leap too, because the Chinese shit is like 1800s, and then all of a sudden we talking about the Vietnam War. What?
They're exposing themselves. They have no valid points. This is a fraud. Like, and a hustler going to name the hustle while they're hustling. Like, dog, you a pimp.
But even if okay, if you want to have the refugee conversation, again, that still has nothing to do with the plight of the Negro and what we are owed in this country. That's a whole other conversation. And I noticed, like, there is no mention of the Japanese in there. Wasn't that kind of convenient? We're talking about all these Asian groups, but we don't talk about the Japanese.
Yeah. You don't want to give them some more money too while you at it? You're giving out all the Negro pie you can. Why not give the Japanese some Negro pie too? Don't leave them out.
Nah, they already got their racial capitalism reparations.
No. But this guy, he wants to give all our Negro pie away. Here's some Negro pie for you, poor white. Here's some Negro pie for you, illegal immigrant. Here's some Negro pie for you, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. Oh, Ukrainians, got some for you too. Oh, Afghanis, here you go. Not for you, Negro. That's what they are. Fuck y'all. We not doing this shit.
And notice there's no discussion about why the Japanese didn't give us any of their Japanese pie. Since we all sharing, I wanted some of that Japanese pie back in the fucking 80s.
Yeah, we could have took 20 racks in the 80s.
But there's no critique of them.
Yeah, for all the Black people out there listening, how many of y'all parents could have used a year's pay in the crack era? Mine could have.
Notice we're not talking about why the Japanese didn't solve the problem of capitalism when they got their reparations. I want to keep going.
Yeah.
Right? So mainly this plan for reparations not only strengthens capitalism, but maintains class relations and class power, and actually does nothing to address contemporary racism. It does nothing to stop organized abandonment. It does nothing to end mass incarceration and all forms of unfree labor and disposability.
Pause. Money does a lot to help with mass incarceration. How many rich white people are going to jail on a regular basis except for killing family members? Let's be real. Like, you not going to jail for a little bit of weed or a little bit of coke when you a multi-millionaire. You not. Shit. You gotta you gotta kill somebody to really go to jail on a DUI if you got enough money.
To the man who has lost his wife and his daughter and sees this young man who has ruined his life, has killed his wife, has killed his daughter, has killed 2 other people as well, ruined the lives of a number of other people as well. What consequence is there really for him killing 4 people?
For 10 years, the judge will have the discretion at any time she chooses to send this kid to the penitentiary.
But this same judge sentenced a 14-year-old, not affluent African-American young man, who killed 1 person after punching that person and they fell down and hit their head this judge sent that 14-year-old to the Texas Juvenile Justice Department for 10 years. And that kid is going to be in there till they're 19 years old. And if they violate their rehab program while they're in there, they may go to the adult justice system. So why is that okay for a 14-year-old poor kid, but for a 16-year-old well-off kid, they get to go have equine therapy? Does that seem fair?
Like, let's be real. How you saying money doesn't change mass incarceration? Yes, it does. The only reason they locking us up is because we're poor and we can't fight back. Now we can afford lawyers. Now we can start contributing to different people in the government in our local and city. We get a little more power. That's what it is. Y'all don't want us to have no power.
Not only that, why are we acting as if reparations isn't like comprehensive? Like even with the California, reparations task force, they talk about mass incarceration. They talk about every single harm that we have experienced in this country, and they're coming up with ways to resolve it. Now, the thing is that if you are serious about these issues, and you see that reparations is actually gaining steam, why wouldn't you come to the reparations conversation adding more detail to that element? If that's really your concern, like if that's really like your focus, but to like try to say like the critique be that that's not the concern of reparations at all, like we're not focused on like actually changing the system as is, like that's disingenuous. And yes, money does help every fucking thing. Like this is a fucking capitalist society. Like I don't understand what we're talking about here. Like, yeah, I get it. You want us to be in a socialist society, but we're not there yet. We're not there. We're not at the point that you want us to be at. So what do you expect Negroes to do?
Live in a world that does not exist.
So in the meantime, what we need to transform the system as much as we possibly can, and we need to put money in our fucking pockets. And if white America was ready for socialism, we would already be there. The real barrier to all of this is that you don't want to deal with the Negro problem.
Let's play. If white people gave a fuck about the climate, y'all would fix the climate. I love some of y'all, but y'all be like, we gotta fix the climate first. And then, if white people cared about the climate, it'd be fixed. A few Negroes is not gonna help you get that done. I need all my Negro energy for myself. Sorry.
And like, we already know that with a lot of these programs that y'all are really wanting to push, the reason that white people are not going for it is because they don't want Black people to get them. So if we actually focus on Black people, take us off of the fucking the chessboard for a second by actually repairing us and doing everything that they don't want you to do, then they have nothing to complain about. It opens the lane for you to really have the conversation about the socialist shit. But you keep trying to avoid us and nobody's getting anywhere. Because we're the elephant in the room that nobody wants to fucking deal with. But you can't fix any of this shit until you deal with us.
Paying your taxes won't end mass incarceration. Paying your electric bill won't end mass incarceration. Buying that expensive ass polo jacket won't end mass incarceration. And yet we continue to do all of these things in spite of their inability to end something that we weren't even discussing. Japanese American reparations did not end mass incarceration, nor was it intended to. If you want to end mass incarceration, do that. If you want to talk about reparations, let's talk about reparations. Reparations is transfer of money that was stolen from Black Americans from the government to Black Americans. That's where the conversation starts. That's where it stops. We don't need to end mass incarceration. That's not our job. We didn't create it. We don't need to end global capitalism. We don't need to end climate change. What we need to do is collect our reparations, stay black, and die. Anything that deviates beyond that path is some white people shit, and y'all need to figure that shit out. Tired of y'all.
Y'all need to have a white people meeting. And instead of having a white people meeting to say racist shit about Negroes, y'all need to have a white people meeting to get this other bullshit y'all talking about together. This climate bullshit, y'all need a white people meeting for that. Fucking healthcare, all that shit, that's a white people meeting. Y'all motherfuckers are the majority.
All right, y'all want to get back into it?
Yeah.
And it does not restore or expand the social wage or address the conditions that render some people vulnerable to all sorts of violence. However, the way I wrote about reparations and freedom dreams, actually operated on socialist principles. And let me make a plug for Femi Taiwo's book, Reconsidering Reparations, which makes a similar argument with even more nuance and detail than I did.
Hey, would somebody be interested in reading like a page and a half for me?
I got you.
All right, starting here.
Gotcha. So the reparations movement provides an analysis of our situation that challenges victim blaming explanations, explaining that exploitation and regressive policies create poverty, not bad behavior. Excuse me. It ought to compel us to pay attention to the centrality of racism in the United States political economy, because one of the consequences of racial differentials in income and economic opportunity is downward pressure on wages for all working people, irrespective of color. It should also make us look at gender, because men and women did not experience exploitation in the same manner. We need to consider things like women's unpaid labor, see Chapter 5, reproduction, sexual abuse, and ways to make restitution for these distinctive forms of exploitation. At the very least, the reparations movement ought to clarify issues like what constitutes a family if payments are to be made to such units, or how we might imagine remaking relationships between men and women, boys and girls, adults and children. If radical transformation of society is one of the goals of the reparations movement, then these questions cannot be ignored. It's not. Unfortunately, most arguments in support of reparations scarcely mention gender. In the end, a successful reparations campaign has the potential to benefit the entire nation, not just the Black community. Since most plans emphasize investments in institutions rather than individual payments, the result would bring a massive infusion of capital for infrastructure, housing, schools, and related institutions in communities with large Black populations. Monies would also be made available. What's this, monies? Yeah, monies would also be made available to support civic institutions and help establish a strong civil society amongst people of African descent, which in turn would strengthen civil society as a whole. Presumably, social ills such as crime, drug use, violence would be reduced considerably, and thus alter the world's image of Black people. Furthermore, the historically Black ghetto communities to which substantial investments would be made also house other poor people of color: Latinos, Afro-Caribbeans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, namely Filipinos, Samoans, South Asians, Korean, etc. They too would benefit from the improved schools, homes, public life, and a politically strengthened Black community. Given the relationship of slavery and racism to the global economy, this outcome makes perfect sense. Many of these poor immigrant groups are themselves products of centuries of imperialism, slavery's handmaiden, if you will, or descendants of slaves, as in the case of many Caribbean and Latin American immigrants. Finally, it should be stressed that reparations for one group will not harm working class whites.
Somehow we're dealing with gender issues. We gotta
Can we pause the gender issue part, Mud?
Yeah.
Isn't this that fucking shit with Ice Cube and them dumb hoes? Vivica A. Fox, and what was the name of their show? Because I can't call it just dumb hoes.
I don't remember the name of the show, but I know what you're talking
but
about.
yeah, so he's talking about a Black agenda, and he's like, well, do you have anything for Black women? Black women are Black people. Black trans are Black people. Gay trans, Black people. Gay, Black, trans, you Black. Like, I can go through the list, whatever non-binary Black people, you're Black. You fall under the Black American umbrella if you descend from Black American chattel slavery, you Black American, American Negro, freedman, whatever you want to call yourself. I don't like to get into semantics of it. That's it. Like, this is just, I'm just tired. I'm so frustrated. You can go ahead from that, but that part, I was just like,
Yeah, you get the money, and if we are talking about individual payments, we don't need to worry about what constitutes a family. Everybody gets their own money. But they for some reason he argues against the idea of individual payments. And then he wants to make sure that investments into institutions instead of individual payments, which aren't we supposed to be against that? Because that kind of sounds like this setting up of a bourgeoisie that will like have control over the capital. And you notice how he's not against capital for infrastructure, housing, schools, and all this stuff, as long as it's going to be things that also help Latinos and, you know, and other people who might be in our community adjacent to these things. But he's not totally against this stuff. He's just like, he just doesn't want the money to go into our hands. So it's very funny what's going on here. And then he ends it off by saying, finally, it should be stressed that reparations for one group will not harm working class whites.
this is just some give Negro shit away to everybody. Listen, oh my God, Joey, what did you say? Oh my God, you said it in another show where you're like, my tragedy is not your
Opportunity.
oh, say it again for me, please. Just say it because it sounds so good out your voice.
My family's trauma is not your opportunity.
You don't get to use our reparations claim to save the country. Y'all got to deal with the government, but we are owed a debt. And I'm not against any of the stuff that you socialists want, because I believe that a strong country of people, working people, middle class people is much better than a bunch of poor and angry people who want to come and kill everybody, because white people are crazy when they lose their money. We've seen it in history. And these Ellis Island motherfuckers and these first and second generation immigrants, y'all really losing your mind. There's a lot of terrorism going on in your groups. So, sorry, I'm just frustrated. I lost my train of thought too. But you can't use us. We're tired of being used. We're not doing this anymore. You're not going to use us to push your agenda. We're going to get what's owed to us, and you better be nicer to us, because you're still going to need us once we get our money. But y'all should just be glad that we're a fair people, because y'all are terrible. Morgan, you got anything? I haven't heard anything from you in a while.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work. Everybody is desperate because a lot of people are going to be quiet, especially like this guy behind the mic, that Toby dude, all of them, because you're not eligible, you're not of our lineage, you're not our people, so you can't speak on our issues, and we're making that very clear. And the only people that any of these white people, whatever side they're on, left, right, whatever, are going to be them, people like that aren't eligible. And that's how it's always been. But now the jig is up because we understand that fully, and they don't like that. And I'm just loving it. All this is to me is like the cookies crumbling and everybody, trying to get to their corner like a storm's coming, because it is.
It's a reckoning. And it's been a long time coming. But again, we're done being your mules. From now on, if you want to deal with us, if you want something from us, you're going to, like Iremy says, he doesn't have an issue with integration, but he does want to integrate on his knees. If y'all want us, y'all gonna come to us as equals. We're not sitting at the kid table no more. We done with that shit. We're not sitting at the kid table where you tell us to shut up, but we still part of the family, so we in the house. We're in the house, but we at the fucking kids table where we can't fucking talk, and we're in the little kitty chairs. That shit's a wrap. Let's keep pushing.
But reparations, in that chapter in Freedom Dreams, was imagined to fund revolutionary movements, not put money in pockets of individuals, but they're like $10 million for the national welfare rights movement.
Did y'all hear that?
National welfare rights movement?
What the fuck is that?
Socialist bullshit.
So instead of like making Black America wholes to where we have the capital to live full and prosperous lives in this country, we should take that money and fund an organization to fight for welfare.
For illegal immigrants and poor white people? No, thank you.
And for ourselves, apparently, because we're not going to have any money.
Yeah, because we're not giving money to individuals. We're just going to give Negroes money to everybody. The Negroes can get welfare. And then white people can tell us how we got reparations through welfare like they already do.
Isn't that a brilliant idea?
I need the pitchforks. I need the pitchforks and the tiki torches, minus the white racists.
Look at his face, though. He said it like he really had one, too. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is that? Nobody even knows what you're talking about. You don't have mass appeal? They're annoying.
As reparations, $20 million for African liberation movements.
I don't give a fuck about Africa. I don't give a fuck about Africa. I don't give a fuck about Africa. And I want all three of those in there, Mud. I don't want you to take a single motherfucking one out. And then can you put in the Nikki Haley quote where she's like, I don't care about my brothers and sisters in the diaspora.
I won't argue that. On a certain level, because I tend to be parochial, for one thing. And I tend to care about Afro-Americans, which I would define as the sons and daughters of slaves and slave owners. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have.
That doesn't, by the way, sound very parochial to me.
It's very parochial because I don't care about my third world brothers and sisters and things like that I'm sure I should. But as we...
You mean you're responsible for a certain situation?
I just can't deal with it.
Yes,
I think that if everybody dealt with their own little situation, yes. If I deal with my block and you deal with your block, we'll have two good...
And Malcolm said that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, because no. You know why? Because y'all don't give a fuck about me. People in Mississippi right now, it's Mississippi, right?
Yeah,
that don't have
Jackson,
water?
Mississippi.
Yes.
Yep.
People right now in Jackson, Mississippi don't have water. Flint, Michigan has not had water for over, 6, 7 years? 8 years. 8 years. 8 motherfucking years. Stop talking to me about third world countries. My people live in third world conditions in this country. Fuck you, pay me now. I don't give a fuck about none of these people. This is not my business. I don't give a fuck about you. I'm sorry. If Black people want to go and do charity in Africa with their money, great. But from what I've heard, a lot of Africans are tired of different charity groups because y'all come over there and rip them off. So this all sounds like a scam to me. Fuck you, pay me. I don't give a fuck about Africa. I don't hate Africa, but I just don't give a fuck. And I don't give a fuck about saving the Southeast Asian people or the South American people. I have enough on my plate right here. It's enough for me to care about American Negroes and try to give a fuck about Americans. That's all I got. I don't have shit for nobody else. My empathy stops at the American fucking borders. I'm sorry.
So far, we're not gonna get our money, but we're going spend money on we spend our reparations money on welfare, and not on like improving us, but I guess Africans. We're gonna send money to Africa. What else does he got?
You know, $20 million for a black college, which says a lot about what they thought of black colleges at the time. So, you know, when you think about it, you have the Black Workers Congress.
So we're talking about money for education,
which we already know doesn't close the racial wealth gap, and HBCUs have a very high non-Black American population these days. So I'm starting to feel like we start auditing these HBCUs looking for American Negroes, we gonna see that there's a lot of others and not a lot of us. And that's a fucking problem because these are supposed to be our fucking schools.
definitely, but none of that is like all this grand transformative shit that he was talking about. And like once this is done, the lives of Negroes are not going to be greatly improved based off of what he's talking about.
He was talking about Darity's book, but obviously he didn't read What We Get Wrong About Closing the Racial Wealth Gap or Running Up the Down Escalator, which are both two reports that Darity did. And if he would have realized what the fuck he's talking about is not revolutionary. This is stupid white people shit y'all keep talking about. But we have done this. We've done this over and over again, and it has not worked out for us. So just give us our fucking money.
So I was waiting to hear about mass incarceration and how we were gonna put a stop to that. Apparently, he just don't give a fuck no more. That was just to throw people off at the first few minutes.
So, you know, when you think about it, you have the Black Workers Congress, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, and N'Cobra and the like. What they wanted to do was bring down the U.S. empire. That was the point of reparations. It was about social justice, reconstructing our lives as a people, ending all forms of racism and exploitation. When you think about and creating a new nation.
N'Cobra want to do what the white people did to the Freedmen's Bank. They want to put all the money in the bank and then fucking run off with the bag. Okay, sorry.
So, you know, when you think about it, you have the Black Workers Congress, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, and N'Cobra and the like. What they wanted to do was bring down the U.S. empire. That was the point of reparations.
Wait, stop. Where in the dictionary does it say the point of reparations is to bring down a government? If the point of reparations is to bring down the U.S. government, why would the U.S. government ever agree to reparations? That sounds like treason. The point of reparations is to repair the fucking harm that you did to my ancestors and to repay the debt that you owe my people. That's the point of reparations. That has nothing to do with tearing down the American empire.
And then he got in Cobra sounding like they're the Panthers. Like, just stop it.
Go fuck yourself. What y'all got? I know somebody else got something besides me. I'm all angry today.
I don't know. It's real funny how, you know, Black America, we have to save all these other groups, and we have to use our energy to do like damn near impossible shit, or else we're not really doing anything. But this expectation is not put on anyone else. The Japanese did not fucking dismantle the American government. The Native Americans did not dismantle the American government. None of these motherfucking groups that received reparations Like, that was never
Native
part of the
Americans don't
fucking,
have to give up their casinos, but
that was never part of the fucking game plan. Like, even when we're talking about the 40 acres and the mule, like, we just wanted the motherfuckers to give us enough to take care of ourselves and to leave us the fuck alone. It wasn't all these grand, like, socialist global revolution plans. We just wanted to fucking be left alone and have like some peace. Like, why is it that no one wants to like allow us to get up out the goddamn struggle for a moment? Can we have a generation or two or just not struggle?
nope. Because if we do, they can't use us to help other groups. We are the mules. Everybody else rides our back. That's why everybody else compares their struggle to us. But, you know, we've literally looked at reports where they said we need to piggyback and, you know, compare our struggle to the civil rights struggle. And all these groups are doing that, from immigrants to other groups. Y'all are out here. So if you fix Negroes, then these other groups got to stand on their own 2 feet. You can't use our story no more. You actually have to fight for your own shit without Negroes. Nobody else in this country has had to fight for their own rights like that. They always find a way to piggyback it on our shit. Oh, it's like when blacks couldn't do this. Oh, it's like when blacks couldn't do that. Y'all don't ever just stand on your own 2 fucking feet. You fucking put us down on the floor and step on our backs so you can get a little leg up. And then you fucking talk about your shit on our backs.
Y'all want me to get back into it?
Yeah.
That was the point of reparations. It was about social justice, reconstructing our lives as a people, ending all forms of racism and exploitation, and creating a new nation. This is why reparations proposals from Black radical movements focus not on individual payments, but securing funds to build Black institutions and, in some cases, establish a homeland. And they imagine new economic arrangements geared toward collective needs rather than accumulation.
You mean our Black institutions that spend all their time fighting for non-Black people? I'll fucking pass. Like the United Negro College Fund that I used to fucking walk for every fucking year when I was a little kid, that gives money to fucking Latinos. But I can't go get a scholarship that's for fucking Latinos. My Black ass can't go get a scholarship from fucking La Raza. But you can get some shit from the United Negro College Fund. Those institutions, nah, I'll pass. The Black institutions are not helping Black American people. They're focused on POCs. Fuck you. No, pay me directly. Give me my money.
Well, if the institutions that we have aren't sufficient, why can't we, once we have our individual resources, create new institutions that focus on the needs that we have at that point, or what we want to accomplish now that we actually have the resources? I don't understand why there has to be this gatekeeping shit with the goddamn money. Everybody does this paternal shit with our fucking money. Motherfucker, it's my ancestors that went through the shit. It's my debt. You don't get to say what the fuck happens with my motherfucking money. They definitely do. All right, y'all want to get back into it, or?
So as I wrote in Freedom Dreams 2 decades ago, reparations has the potential to radically transform society, redistributing wealth, creating a democratic and caring public culture, exposing the ways capitalism and slavery produced massive inequality.
Why don't you redistribute wealth without using Negroes' reparations? You don't need Black Americans to do that. I would actually like y'all to redistribute wealth and then give me my $151 million Yes, because that's what it is. And that was before inflation. So yeah, no, wouldn't you like that, Mud? We do wealth redistribution. We get leveled like we supposed to as Americans, and then you get your check.
Yeah, I don't know why that is in the
I mean, and I don't mean
conversation.
like I want. Sorry, I asked you a question, but I don't want people to think I'm saying we should do wealth redistribution and then reparations. I'm saying I want them to sign them at the same time, but I want them to wealth redistribute and give me my check so I can move up, then move down. I mean, move up and move up. Go ahead, Mud, because I want people to be like, oh my God.
Nah, I'm totally with it. Like, it becomes this strange thing where reparations becomes like the platform for all of their political projects. Like they make reparations into everything but what it actually is. And they don't have to do that. Like you could just talk about your shit.
But
Like,
how is a poverty pimp going to do that? They can't.
well, the problem is that if they don't talk about us, no one's going to care. Like they need our energy. Like it is a real thing. Like they don't have like any fucking charisma. They don't have any fucking like flavor. It's all us. All right, should we get back into it?
Yep.
Massive inequality. It helps us all understand how wealth and poverty are made under capitalism, particularly a capitalism shaped immeasurably by slavery and racism. It stresses the fact that labor, not CEOs, not scientists and technicians, not the magic of the so-called free market, creates wealth. It ought to compel us to pay attention to the centrality of racism in the US political economy, because one of the consequences of racial differentials in income and economic opportunity is downward pressure on wages for all working people. And then I also add, just very quickly, it should make us look at gender and consider women's unpaid labor, reproduction, sexual abuse, and ways to make restitution for these distinctive forms of exploitation.
But what the fuck does any of that have to do with the shit that we've gone through? Like unless you're talking specifically about Black American women, like something in the reparations thing that is specific to them, like, okay, but other than that, like, I don't get this shit. Like, what is the need to constantly twist up our shit? I don't know what else to fucking say about this shit. Cause they consistent, like it's one thing, like, all right, you mix up one issue with our issue because you're just so passionate about that. But we like heard 30 different lefty issues get twisted in the mix with our shit in like less than 8 minutes.
I see why people's heads was exploding on Twitter. But this is the same shit that Matt Brunig be saying. This is shit that the John Brown leftists, now the Red, Black, and Green Network, whether the Blackout Network, Black Network, whatever, wherever the fuck Chairman Nick went and Mr. Cruz went. So yeah, and Matt Brunig, I feel like I already said that. We talked about this with the Socialists in Detroit. Like, this is not new. These people have been saying this shit over and over again. Y'all got to catch up. But I'm glad that y'all have, because we got to beat this shit back. Anything else, you guys? I feel like I'm rambling tonight. Am I rambling? That was the actual question.
Nah, I think, we kind of saying the same things over and over again because it's like,
Because he keeps jumping around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of this, right? So we can land our plane?
No, we're at the end.
Okay, that was it?
Yeah.
Fuck socialists. Reparations is polling higher than socialism. Eat a member if you don't like eating members. That's it. I don't really have anything to say. Like, I feel like we've done this already. We've done this. This is, like I said, it's the Groundhog Day shit. We've done this. Joey, can you say it? Can you say it for me, my friend?
My family's trauma is not your opportunity.
That's it. I'm done being your mule. You can no longer use me and my people to piggyback on your issues. It's time for everybody to hold their own motherfucking nuts. And if you ain't got no nuts, hold your motherfucking ovaries. And if they had to take your ovaries, hold your twat. That's all I got. What y'all got? Because this is the end. We closing this shit up.
Just keep collecting all of that reparation hustle, bubblehead, egghead money, because it's coming to an end. Like, get your panel discussions, get all of that, and get it fast. 'Cause it's almost over.
For the bum ass black academics, I think y'all should be forced to show the audience you're speaking to when y'all have to do these little anti-reparations panels.
You know, it's a bunch of white people. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I just, there's no way you could have brought this message in front of me and people like me. So like, I know what you're doing and the rest of the world needs to see what you're doing. You're just giving white people passes as to all the different ways they can ignore reparations. You bum ass, knockoff Spike Lee looking motherfucker.
Yeah, I said everything I need to say. Like, y'all not gonna remix our politics. We see through you. The jig is up. You're not gonna be able to twist up our agenda and make us focus on your agenda. We do not give a fuck. We do not care about your socialism. We do not care about ending the capitalism conversation. We do not care about the ending the imperialism conversation. And look, y'all can have all of those political persuasions and fight for that shit, and we're not gonna get your way. We're just gonna focus on our shit. And what we want you to do is to stop interfering with our shit. Do your shit. We'll do our shit. Our shit is popping. Your shit is dead. I understand why you're mad, but you're not going to get anywhere fighting with us because we're just going to keep kicking your ass. And I don't know, like, I don't see this as a successful strategy for you. I just see you alienating the same people that you need to actually win anything in this fucking country. And you're about to go into the dark ages. Like we're not going to be talking about any of the shit that y'all want for a very, very, very long time. And we could change that up if y'all shift course. Otherwise, whoever bites on this reparation shit, whether it be like the liberals, the centrists, even if the fucking conservatives, which I don't know, but if they somehow fucking figure it out and they push for reparations, it's going to be their agenda for the next 50 to 100 years. So y'all better get with the program. Yeah, that's all I got. All right, y'all, we're going to just end it like that?
Well, Joey and Morgan need to give their closing thoughts.
We did.
Oh, well, then we done. Bye, niggas. No, I'm tired of this shit. Like I said, we done. We've been done. Fuck this shit.
Listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, back on the grill again. We grilling them, You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our our justice claim, we know what is at stake. You tuned in to Reset Race, you'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations, penniage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration, redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual, Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies, the backbone of the country, the win, you need our energy. Go on, sit, listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.